on the request of Cairo. Also, France's defense minister says that French troops killed risk. Now, the Nile traverses 10 countries and the dispute has regional implications. Talks broke down earlier this year, and the new round of negotiations are happening in Washington after Egypt asked US President Trump to help mediate. Now, he met briefly with delegates on Wednesday before the discussions were taken over by the US Treasury Secretary, thus bypassing the State Department that's actually been dealing with the issue since 2011. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
Egypt relies on the Nile for around 90% of its fresh water. The country is worried that the giant Renaissance dam that Ethiopia is building will affect the flow of the longest river in the world. Ethiopia has yet to fill the reservoir behind its dam, and already Egypt is short of water.
There is very little Nile water. Sometimes there's a bit more in winter because the land doesn't need a lot of water then. But in summer, we don't get any.
Egypt has nearly 100 million inhabitants and Ethiopia just over 100 million. They are the second and third most populous countries in Africa behind Nigeria.
If the Nile water drops, like I said before, any 2% drop of water affects 1 million people. So it's really the more impoverished categories and the farmers, I think, that will be affected most.
The $4 billion Renaissance Dam was announced in 2011. Ethiopia hopes to start filling the reservoir next year. The Ethiopian government accuses Egypt of wanting to maintain a colonial-era grip over the Nile's waters. Cairo currently bases its share of the river's waters on a 1959 deal that gave it 55 billion cubic meters water annually and Sudan 18 billion. But Ethiopia was not party to the agreement and does not recognize it. One of the main sticking points is the rate at which Ethiopia will draw water out of the Nile to fill the dam's reservoir. Addis Ababa says Cairo's requirement of a guaranteed 40 billion cubic meters water is unrealistic.
Well, Ethiopia said that nothing will stop the dam from going forward, and the water war with Egypt has in the past sparked some pretty heated words. More.
Ethiopia wants a new water allocation agreement that distributes the Nile waters equitably between all states. Egypt has a concept of its historic rights to the Nile, and that's key to this dispute. That's the sort of overarching disagreement between the two countries. Much more specifically, relating to this dam, is the issue of how quickly Ethiopia fills the dam in the initial period, and then what the arrangements are for the actual operation of the dam. And the key issue there is timing and water releases. So how much water is Ethiopia going to release each year to Egypt, and therefore over how many years, how gradually is Ethiopia willing to fill this dam? And that's the sort of the much more specific point of disagreement between the two countries. We can see that conflict is a potential ultimate eventuality, and we know that it's a national security issue and taken very seriously by both sides. That led to this belligerent rhetoric we've seen in the past.